Welcome to another episode of An Extraordinary Take, where we share extraordinary ideas and visions with extraordinary people. My name is Sibonisile Cossa, and I'm so excited that you've taken the time to join me as we learn and grow together. Let's get into it, shall we? Hello everybody, welcome to An Extraordinary Take, where we share extraordinary ideas and visions with extraordinary people. My name is Bo, and I'm so privileged to be sitting here and to get the opportunity to speak to you guys about things that really, really matter to me. And today's episode is particularly important and very close to my heart. I do want to start by issuing a trigger warning, because we are talking about gender-based violence and femicide. And I know that this is a topic that could be very triggering for many people. So I do just want to give you the opportunity to say if you at any point need to stop, if you need to take a breather, that's completely okay. I would love for you to stay to listen, because I do think that what we're talking about is very important. But I do want you to check in with yourself and to take care of yourself and to prioritize your feelings and whatever may be coming up. So tread with caution. If you are an ally, and I want to say this specifically to the men, I want to encourage you to stay and listen, and to listen with the intention of understanding, and with the intention of being more accountable in terms of how you can be more effective and helpful when it comes to conversations like this. I saw an interview from Sia Kolisi a couple of days ago, and he was talking to men, and he was saying something along the lines of, don't wait until this happens to someone in your life, somebody you know, somebody you love. And while I get that sentiment, what I thought as he was speaking was, chances are this has happened to somebody that you know and somebody that you love. It's just that you haven't been having those conversations. So I think sometimes we go to the extreme where it's like if somebody passes away from femicide or from gender-based violence crimes, and it's somebody that you know, only then should you take actions. I think if you started having conversations with the women around you, the women in your churches, the women in your workplaces and in your friend groups, you would find that so many of them are actually affected by this. So there's actually no one that does not have a vested interest in being part of this conversation. So I wanted to start off by saying that. And then I want to intro our incredible guest, Cameron Kasambala. She's a spokesperson for Women for Change. If you've been living under a rock, Women for Change is one of SA's leading voices in fighting gender-based violence and femicide. They use the power of social media to raise awareness, support survivors, and really just create real change. Welcome, Cameron. How are you feeling?
I'm okay. You know, when we get asked that question, like, I'm angry because we're always angry.
Yeah.
But generally, I'm okay.
You're like in between. I think the anger's like always there.
Exactly.
And then you're just, then you just try to fill it with the other stuff.
Exactly.
So that it's not so overwhelming. Can you just take us through a little bit on how you first got involved with Women for Change, what Women for Change is, and what pushed you to be part of this movement?
Okay, so I got involved with Women for Change actually last year, November. Mm-hmm. I was working a different job. I was like an admin assistant. And then one of my colleagues was like, you know, if you ever want something, just like reach out directly. I was thinking, I was like, who would I want to reach out to? Who would I want to work with? And then I was like, wait, for the past 3 years of me studying psychology, all I've been talking about is gender-based violence and femicide. So what better organization than Women for Change? I've been following them since 2018. So I sent my little email and I said, hi, here's my CV. Here's why I want to join. Tell me what you think. And Sabrina said she doesn't generally check the emails. But for some reason, she was checking the emails then, and she saw my email. And she's like, I want to meet with you. So we have this meeting, And then she says, I really like what you're doing. I definitely will reach out to you. Now, Sabrina's very busy and she gets very occupied. And at this time, the Chris Brown kind of petition was happening and it was chaos. So I didn't hear from her in November. I nudged her in December.
Yeah.
I nudged her in January.
Oh, wow.
And then she was like, oh my gosh, yes, we actually have an opening for a job as a community manager.
Yeah.
Please fill out the application and I will connect you with the person doing the interviews. And so I connected with this person and she was like, I'm happy with you. So I was like, I'm happy with you. So come mid-February, I started Women for Change.
Wow.
And I didn't expect that this is what I would be doing now. I was initially just going to be in the victim support. I was going to be, because we have people reaching out to us on our social media platforms. So we connect them with free counseling or free lawyers or even just listening to them and holding space. And often they come to us to tell us about missing people that they want us to share, or memorial posts that we create for loved ones that, they've lost.
Sure.
And then it started to shift into me doing one interview and then two interviews. And then we realized, actually, I'm pretty good at interviews. And because I'm passionate about the work, it comes from a real place.
Yeah.
I started to be able to do this a little bit more. And that's how suddenly I'm here and I'm doing this work. And so I think with Women for Change, I mentioned some of the things we do, but Sabrina had this vision and she made it in 2016 where she decided, I want to bring an end to gender-based violence and femicide.
Yeah.
So she started Women for Change and it came from a different organization that she was doing, which was Catch Me If You Can, which was like a running club. And then she shifted and she's like, no, we need to do something like really. So she started this MPO and we do things like amplifying and bringing awareness. So like I mentioned, to the stories that aren't going viral and trending, we're posting about them. We're educating people on GBV. We're teaching them about what's happening. We're pushing and advocating for policy change and kind of like what we're doing with the shutdown and then our victim support. So that's kind of the work we do.
Okay. And I mean, the reason why you're here now is because of the G20 Women Shutdown. And for somebody who's sitting at home who doesn't know what that is and what that's about, can you just kind of lay it down in terms of explaining how it started, what the heart behind it is, and what you aim to achieve with it?
Okay. So I think I'll start in April because on the 11th of April is when we began this really push for declaring gender-based violence and femicide a national disaster. And at that time, we had this petition that we came over. It had about 170,000 signatures and we printed them out and we handed it over to the government. We were like, here's our memorandum. We want you to fully fund the NSP, which is the National Strategic Plan, right, to tackle GBVF. We want you to release the National Sex Registry Offenders List publicly so it's freely available to everyone. We want you to improve comprehensive sexual education. We want you to do judicial and law enforcement reforms and training because there's not enough specialized training on gender-based violence and femicide in the police spaces and in the courts. And just like things like that. And so we hand this over and while doing this, we displayed our unburied casket. And the unburied casket was this casket that was 33.8% bigger than a normal one to match the 33.8% increase in femicide that had happened. And in that, we had 5,578 purple beads for that being the number of women that had been killed due to femicide in 2023 to 2024. So at that time, we had people turning their profile pictures to purple to kind of represent those beads. Continuing to now, we received minimal response from the government. They essentially were told by, the Minister of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities that they had everything in place, they had the frameworks and they were doing enough. And that there's nothing really for them to do additionally and that they had met all our demands. Which we beg to differ, obviously, because the statistics say otherwise. I mean, how do you have a 33.8% increase in femicide and then say your frameworks are working and these frameworks were started in 2020? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And our femicide rate is 6 times the global average, just like to contextualize our standing with the rest of the world. So then
we're known as the rape capital.
Because 117 rape cases are reported every single day. And that's only 5% of the cases. So we get this response and we're like, that's absolutely ridiculous. We're not happy with that. So Sabrina's very creative and she has a really cool mind and she's always thinking of things we can do. And she thought of the idea of doing a shutdown. And now they did something like that in like 1975 in Iceland. 90% of the women did not go to work. Because of that, Iceland came up with a bunch of new policies and reforms to fix the kind of state of gender-based violence that was happening within Iceland and kind of fix the gaps and pay gaps and things like that to, make sure women were properly supported. So then Sabrina was like, we're doing it here. And we've chosen to do it now. because the G20 event is a major event. I mean, some of the most powerful leaders across the world are coming together here.
Yeah.
South Africa wants to be seen as a strong and growing, stable economy. But we can't have that conversation when on the ground, the lived experience is vastly different. And I mean, we've seen it. I mean, they're fixing the potholes in the streets and for this event. And meanwhile, for the past how many years have we had these potholes and these lights not working?
Just window dressing.
Exactly. And now that is the same now for this with GBVF and the fact that they're ignoring it.
Yeah.
So we decided that, okay, we're doing the shutdown and we're going to declare the same thing, which is we need to get GBVF declared as a national disaster.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a bit messy because we've now received a lot of engagement from the government.
Yeah.
They're reacting now very quickly because our petition is now at over 1 million signatures.
Yeah.
And we're getting a lot of international attention. And because of that, they're feeling a lot of pressure. So now all of a sudden they want to have meetings with us. They want to talk about things. They want to discuss these things. I mean, we received a no from the National Disaster Management Center. They said, no, this doesn't qualify as a national disaster. They didn't give us exactly why. It just said we don't meet the criteria. So it's been a lot of back and forth. And now we're like at the point where the shutdown is happening, irrespective of the meetings we're having. It's happening.
Yeah.
These meetings are essentially just us waiting for them to admit that they were wrong.
Yeah.
And that they will be declaring it a national disaster. But that's kind of the intention and the root of what's happening and why the shutdown is so important.
Yeah. I find it so interesting, and we were just talking about it before we started recording, how much backlash you guys have received during this time. You would think that you were trying to do something that is just, it makes absolutely no sense to me that you are receiving so much backlash and so many people also saying declaring it a national disaster is too dramatic. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't actually apply because it's not a real, like it's only for disasters that pertain to climate or whatever the case is, which isn't really the point, right? And I think obviously we know what the reasons for some of that backlash is. Most of the people are just being malicious. But for people who are saying that you're kind of just blowing this whole thing out of proportion, and just all kinds of things that don't make sense. How would you respond to that, to say like why we actually need this to be done? And I'm sure it's exhausting, for women to constantly make a case for why our lives matter, right? To make a case for why even these conversations should be happening and why it should be taken seriously. But can you contextualize it for people at home who could maybe be educated, to see how deep this crisis actually lies?
Okay. I think I'm going to tackle it like the three main issues that we see. So like you mentioned, people who think it's not as big of a deal. So why are we calling it that? I'm going to speak about this Justice for Men movement because it's often the retaliation. Yeah. And I'm going to speak about this funding rumor that keeps floating around. So for it's not as bad as we think, our statistics are very misleading. We actually underreport kind of what's happening. I mean, in the most recent crime statistics, they didn't even mention femicide and child murders. So there's like this omission of data that is severely lacking. And so people don't realize the extent of which this is happening. Now, when you're on the ground like we are and we're talking to survivors and victims and their loved ones, you see what is going on. I mean, we're doing like 10 memorial posts every single day that we're getting that we need to do. You know, we're getting hundreds of DMs every single day talking about being raped, abusive situations. Like we see it firsthand. And people don't. And these numbers lie. And so people don't realize the extent of what's happening. And this thing of calling it a national disaster is important because currently GBVF is devastating families and communities. It's destroying homes and workspaces, and it actually has economic consequences. It costs this country to have GBVF. You know, it costs people to deal with it. It's not something that I think people understand. Like, it's not just about, oh, you know, you're doing this thing and we don't like it. It's major. The psychological impact, economic impact, the social impact, and those kind of things should be viewed as a national disaster. Because the nation is made by citizens. And currently more than half of your citizens are in threat and are being attacked and face danger every single day. Why would you not think of that as a national disaster? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's like something important. And I think what happens is people don't understand what the national disaster means and what it will do. So for context, if you think of 2020 when COVID hit, national disaster, state of emergency, the government declared these things. And what that meant was they had certain agency and an ability to bypass a lot of the bureaucratic systems that kind of hinder your ability to do things. You know, they could skip past certain legislation processes to get legislation processed faster.
Yeah.
So we were seeing the curfews that were coming out, the banning of alcohol, of cigarettes. We were seeing the reaction with improving service delivery. We had the military patrolling. We had, like, it was quick. We were seeing...
Because it was a big emergency.
It was a big emergency.
And lives were at risk.
Exactly. And people were in danger of dying.
Exactly.
Right. So I wonder why people, again, more than half the population is in danger of dying and we're not taking it seriously. Because we're talking about women, we're talking about children, and we're talking about the LGBTQI+ community. So those are three distinct groups that are being persecuted by gender-based violence and femicide. So with that, if the government was to treat it like a national disaster, all it means is that they now have to act with a sense of urgency because they're acknowledging the magnitude of the issue. And that's what they need to do, because then we hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Because if they admit this is a crisis, they have to act like it's a crisis.
Yeah.
So then we're going to see funding coming out quicker, policies coming out quicker. You know, they're going to release the National Sexual Industry Offenders List. There won't be an excuse not to release it. The National Strategic Plan, there's no excuse not to fund it. Like those things start to come into place, and it's a lot more impactful than people realize. So I think that's the first thing about why it's called national disaster.
Yeah.
Then, as we know, when movements come out about human rights, there's always the retaliatory group.
Yeah.
You know, we see Black Lives Matter, all lives matter.
All lives matter.
You know, we're seeing pro-Palestine, okay, but about Israel, we're seeing like you can never have a movement without the opposing movement.
Yeah.
So with this movement, we're seeing the justice for men. And the challenge that we're having, because this is the pushback we're getting a lot from men, is that we are ignoring the fact that men are being killed every single day, that they are being killed more than women, that they are, you know, they're convincing us that there's also mental health issues for them, and they're also being, and I think the problem is that this only ever happens when we're talking about our issues.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to talk about justice for men when we're talking about justice for women.
Yeah.
It's never, I mean, how many months are there in the year? 12.
Yeah.
We've decided to do this as Women's Month in August, and we're doing this in November.
Yeah.
What happened the rest of the year that they decided not to talk about this?
Yeah.
You know, I think June is considered Men's Mental Health Month.
Yeah.
Why was that not the conversation then?
No one is stopping anyone from raising awareness around that.
Exactly. No one is saying men cannot have issues and challenges. But again, why is it on the backs of women and the queer community's movement?
Yeah.
Why is it riding off on things that we're doing? Why is
Why
it
are
always
you threatened by it as well?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we talk about power dynamics and oppression, something we'll notice is that when people in power in a place of privilege feel like the person is trying to get to the same level, they actively view it as if they're being pushed down, when the reality is you're not going anywhere. We're just bringing people to the same level as you.
Yeah.
And because of that, they feel the need to center themselves back in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw this TikTok that was going viral of this man in a voice note, and he was talking about, oh, you guys are fighting so hard and you're making this big fight out of GBV, and you guys deserve what you're getting. If you're going to make it a big deal, then we deserve to beat you and you deserve to die. You know, and that video was going viral. And I was like, excuse me? What are you talking about? Who says that?
I have to say, though, that does not surprise me, because I have a friend that I have this conversation with, and she's always telling me to stop reading the comment sections of things, right?
Right.
And there is nothing that still shocks me more to the core when there will be a post about a woman that's been killed, say by her husband or wife, and the comments from the men just like, what did she do? No man would just kill you for no reason. This is always just about you guys never look at the woman. And I can't believe that people like that exist. I can't believe that this is something that you even have to explain, or that we're even talking about, like, who deserves it? Like, in what situation is it okay to kill someone? In what context is it ever okay to rape someone? But it really does seem that there is such I don't know how to explain it. There is it's a lack of empathy, but also a dehumanization of women by men. I don't think that when it comes to these conversations, they see us as human. And so when the human life is lost, there isn't like it doesn't, it's like we were talking about the Palestine issue. The world isn't responding the same way as, for example, they did when Ukraine.
And we can talk about race and the overlap with those kind of things and the complexity of like these kind of situations. And that's what makes it so hard, is that it's multi-layered.
Yeah.
We can talk about substance abuse and how substances impact things. We can talk about unemployment and how socioeconomic factors influence things, a history of violence and how that influences this nature. But like you said, when you can view someone as a second-class citizen or you can objectify them, I have no problem kicking the table.
Yeah.
Like, if the table hit me, I'm going to kick it. Like, it's a table.
Yeah.
That's the equation. That's how they view us. Like, that's the you know what I'm saying? Like, that's exactly what we are. We are like this object that they own, that they're entitled to, that they get to claim. And that means that we are not viewed as human beings to them, like you said. And that makes it scary.
Yeah.
And that's why the comments get ugly, because it starts to be like, okay, first off, what is happening? I mean, I know you saw the two cousins that were murdered, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember the first narrative that came in. They were talking about 10,000 rand was spent on them at this pub. And if you're going to spend 10,000 rand, then they deserve to die, because why did they blah, 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 blah. And I did an interview, and this lady said something. She said, which always makes me upset when women are saying these things. She said, I'm not blaming them, and I'm not saying it's their fault, and I don't think it's right, and you know that it's going to come up badly. But don't you think that they needed to consider the fact that why are they accepting this amount of money from these men? And why do they think that this was a good, like, don't they think of their safety? And then I asked, I was like, who in their right mind spends 10,000 rand on people they don't know? And even if so, who does that? That's not a normal. I would never. I feel bad spending 500 on people I don't know. Like, who does that?
What, and who asked you?
Exactly. And then they were wrong, because that wasn't the case. It was an ex-partner of one of the cousins. So not only did we run with this negative, ugly narrative and shame them, you were wrong.
Yeah.
And this is what happened. They jumped on this bandwagon of this like witch trial to like hunt women down and find there has to be some kind of reason. And they dig for a reason to justify it.
Yeah. And I mean, where it falls short, because if you think about back, like a while back when we just started speaking openly about rape, what used to kind of happen is the conversation would be around, oh, but what was this person wearing? Why is it that you're going around dressed like this? What do you think is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And then we started having conversations about children being raped.
And grandmothers and elderly
grandmothers, being raped. And so then what is the basis for any abuse to take place? And what I'm essentially getting to is whether somebody had a skirt hiked up to their head, right? If you are not a rapist, you will not rape them, right?
Exactly.
And I think the conversation is, it's very concerning. And I think there's a mind thing, that I'm just not understanding when it comes to particularly, South African and African men in terms of how they view women, what they feel is okay for us to be able to endure.
It's insane. And that's why when we talk, we say women and we say the queer community.
Yeah.
Because it's ugly for them as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I hate being on social media sometimes. I saw this TikTok and this guy was like, but like, really, what's the problem with like raping children? Like, what's the issue? Like,
please don't.
I'm so serious. And like, I felt like I could throw up. I felt so sick, like, in my stomach. I was like, what are we talking about? I'm getting emotional. I'm like getting sad. And I'm like, because you hear these kind of things and you wonder, who the hell are you sitting next to in these rooms? Like, who is next to you and that's why that National Sex Registry of Offenders is so important.
Yeah.
Because who are you sitting next to in these moments? Who are these people that are in the same rooms as us? Like, it's disgusting. And I mean, for the queer community, like a big thing that we hear a lot is corrective rape. You already know.
Yeah.
And it's big with like, it happens to lesbian women and trans men. And it's this whole thing like, oh, I'll treat you like a man, or I'll teach you what a real man is. And it's ugly. It's sinister. And so again, why do people think that we're making such a big issue out of this? Because this is not normal behavior. This kind of behavior it's sinister, it's cruel, it's disgusting. And so like the pushback when people are saying like, oh, but it's not that big of a deal, or they're like trying to do these opposing movements like justice for men, it's like, shut up. Like, actually just close your mouth for like 2 seconds, because this is not your time. This is not your place. And you want to do stuff, do it on your own time and do your own things. So that was like the second thing, this pushback and this, you start to see also with the pushback, you see ugly sides of people come out. Like when people want to push back on your movements, this is why I was saying we see ugliness coming out. You see the real people behind these social medias. You see the real friends that you allegedly have. That's when it really comes out, when stuff like this is happening. And then I think the last thing for us is like, and I mentioned to you before the interview, was the narrative around nonprofit organizations and how we function, and like the reality and the pushback we get as well often comes from the place of how people view our organization. So our founder, Sabrina Walter, she's German. And she doesn't hide that. It's not a secret. But she's been here since 2010. So she's lived here for 15 years. And she has a daughter. She has a life. She has her own, space. Like she is a whole person who is part of this community. And she made this organization. And to this day, people will still say we are out of touch, we're insensitive, we cannot be trusted because we have this German leader. Like it's nasty. Like it gets very like, why is that?
And what are those people doing?
Right?
Like if you are so moved by it, if you feel that it's so important and you're so touched by somebody from outside of the country doing something, why haven't you done something about it?
And Sabrina will say that she doesn't do sponsored posts, she doesn't do sponsorship. She's done this simply by committing her life to doing this work. She overworks herself so much. I mean, she's up at 2 a.m. still doing this thing, waking up at 8 a.m. to continue doing, like, she's worked like a dog to get this organization where it is. And she has committed her life to this movement. And so when people are having these conversations and they're judging our organization because of our founder, or they're judging our organization because we have, international people being a part of it, it's like, that has nothing to do with the movement. Or the issue of funding, and they want to say, okay, but you guys are making so much money, and how can we trust you? And first off, we don't make money. Like, let's just put that out there. We don't make money. Only now are we seeing donations coming in. And I mean, if it wasn't for Sabrina and the money that she pulled out from her savings, or the loan she takes out, or she doesn't pay herself for the month because she's helping, like, if it wasn't for her doing that, like, I don't know how we would function. And I mean, we almost closed in May because of that, but people will make it seem like we're this multi-million-dollar corporation with all these people. Meantime, we're 5 people working on minimal funds.
I was just about to say.
But then how did we do this? And organizations that have ministers or diplomats or big leaders who have more resources and connections, and how did we do this and they didn't do this? Or why do we care more than they do about this issue? And that's why we look sideways at organizations like the ANC Women's League, and even the Minister of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities, because we had an interview with them like 2 weeks ago, and they flat out said, the minister said, you guys shouldn't be doing the shutdown. Like, you're damaging the economy. You're causing problems for women. You shouldn't be doing this. The ANC Women's League was like, we don't align with the work and the protests that you're doing because, you're trying to boycott the G20 and you're trying to do this and this thing. And it's like, first off, no one said the G20 is a bad thing. We've never said it's a problem. It's great for Africa as a whole and South Africa to get the attention. Our problem was with our government, who's hiding and doing this G20, meanwhile they're ignoring their citizens who are dying. That's the problem. The economics bit, we're not saying that everyone has to stop. Like, the way we've structured it is, obviously we said women in the queer community, like, refrain from going to work, whether it's paid or unpaid labor. However, not everyone can do that. And that's why we're doing at 12 o'clock those 50 minutes of silence, to honor the 50 women that are killed every single day, because you can participate from anywhere. For those 50 minutes, you can step aside and you can lie down and you can just be part of that moment and still join in that movement, even if you don't have the privilege to step away from your job or your university. And so we've tried to make sure that we've considered everyone and everything when we do this kind of work. And Sabrina's so deeply empathetic and caring that she makes sure that she thinks of everyone. And so when we're getting pushback like that, it's like a slap in the face. Like, we will work tirelessly. I mean, a team of 5 people, we're working back to back to back, making sure that we're doing this properly, without forgetting that our core mission is to protect and care for our survivors, victims, and their loved ones.
Yeah, I think, it's very interesting that it's rubbing people off the wrong way. And it's also, I think, interesting when it also comes from other women, who actually often, sometimes, are victims themselves or have been, and just cannot empathize with other survivors because no one was there for them. So what I've often found is like this thing of, oh yeah, I was raped too, and I'm fine. Like, why are you making such a big deal of it? And I'll give you like an example of, within the Black community when it comes to marriage, like lots of women find themselves in very abusive relationships, right? And then you'll find, said woman will go to the older woman in her community to say, this is what's happening in my marriage. This is what my husband's doing. And the woman will say, and so, that has happened to us. You think you're special. Like, why must there be special precautions or things put in place for you when we had to endure it for this many years? And so I think sometimes the backlash that comes from women for movements like this is often is that like, oh, we had to withstand it and we had to endure it, and you guys now think you're special. This new generation, you want to make everything a big deal.
I love the new generation thing, like, oh, this new generation, you're so ungrateful, you're so privileged, you're entitled, you guys don't work hard, you don't think you have to do anything to succeed. And it's
so
like,
we must stay in chains.
First off, why did you bother doing any movements then? Like, if you didn't want us to have the ability to like do life, like, and maybe it's good to compare to other movements. Like, we had the apartheid system, right?
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah.
Horrible thing.
Yeah.
Why would you then not want to uplift other Black people? Because we see it with like these like leadership positions where Black people are not trying to lift up other Black people in poverty, and they're very comfortable in their wealth and they don't care. So then why did we do this movement if you didn't care to help Black people? Like, then what was the point?
What was the point?
Right? Why did women push for women's rights if you don't want us to push for even more rights?
Yeah.
Like, don't you want your child to not be beaten and abused and raped? Why would you want that for them? What kind of parent are you? What kind of friend are you? Like, and like you said, it's intergenerational trauma.
Yeah.
Like, we pass it down to the next person. And that's the thing with abuse as well. We pass these abuser tendencies down to the next generation.
Yeah.
Like, we did volunteering at a school, and like, this is how grim it gets with the intergenerational trauma. Grade 1s, okay? This grade 1 boy tried to kiss this grade 1 girl, and she like shoved him off. She's like, no. This grade 1 boy said, I'm gonna rape and kill you. Where do you even learn to say that kind of thing? Where did you pick up that that's what you do? And why do you know to say it in this situation to this person? Where does that come from? Because it's not coming from school, I hope. I don't think they're teaching abuse in school. So it's coming from somewhere. And we know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
It's in their houses.
Yeah.
Because that's why when you ask me how I'm doing, I'm angry. Cause like, I'm angry like permanently. Yeah. Like, there's other emotions on top of anger, but like, you're either sad or angry.
Yeah.
And being sad, it takes you into such a depressed space. And it's hard to do anything when you're sad.
Yeah.
But when you're angry, that drives you, that passion, that fury, like that pushes it. And I can see in your face, like the anger you're feeling. It's like, what is happening?
Yeah. We are living in strange times, but I think back to, the point about anger is we speak about all these movements, and we speak about the apartheid movement, and that they had to push through, right? And in them also pushing through, there were so many people that were okay with the status quo, including Black people.
Can I tell you the scariest thing?
Yeah.
I had an Uber driver, and he somehow brought up the apartheid, and he was like, it wasn't actually that bad.
Yeah.
And he was Black, and he was like, it wasn't actually that bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
He's like, no, actually, even the white people weren't even that bad, really. It was kind of chill.
Yeah. I mean, you think like even in the States, like Harriet Tubman, you know, there were slaves who she was trying to free, and they would tell on her. They would go to the slave masters and say, like, this woman is trying to take us away. And I think, like, that just speaks to how deep some of these things can get from a mental perspective, in terms of, I think it's like, what is it that we believe about ourselves, first of all?
Right.
You know, as people, what is it that we believe? Who do we think we are? Like, who do we believe we are? And then, how do we see each other? You know, and I think it starts off, the dehumanization starts off with this idea that we're not equal.
Right.
Right. And so if we're not equal, if I can see you as less than, then your life is also less than. Then your life has a little less meaning than mine, which is why I can take it away. Right. And so as a society, what we really have to start really, really looking at is, what are these narratives that we're pushing about each other as human beings? Like the role of women, the role of the LGBTQI community. Like, what are we saying? And what is this othering that is happening?
And I think that speaks to, like, you're almost like oppression Olympics, I'm gonna call it, where, like, we have to be oppressed more than the other person, because somehow, some way, like, there's a worse person and it's worse off.
Yeah.
Like, you think, like, for when we look at, like, white women and black men, like, I always think that they're the most interesting people to look at, because white women have the privilege of race, but the oppression of being a woman. And black women have the privilege of being a man, the oppression of being black. And so what do? They punch down. And who do they punch down onto? Black women. And black queer people. And so even in queer spaces, like, you'll notice, like, white people in queer spaces are still oppressive to people of color in queer spaces, you know? Like, there's this weird, like, okay, we have to punch down to feel better,
so that we feel more powerful.
Exactly. But we will never let you forget for the traits that we have that are something that we're oppressed by. And everybody wants to be oppressed right now. Because we're having these conversations, and maybe that's why I was saying, like, with the retaliation movements, like with the Justice for Men. It's like, why do you want to be oppressed so bad? It's not fun. This isn't fun and glamorous.
It's not something we want to own.
Like, who wants to be in fear of being raped and killed every single day? Like, I don't know if they think it's like a cool thing, but, like, these oppression Olympics, it's not necessary. Like, and so, like, it speaks to that thing of, like, you're saying, like, how do we view one another? Why is it a competition? Why is it I must either punch down and be superior to someone, or I need to be even more oppressed so I look like more of a victim? And by being a victim, therefore, I can never be in the wrong. And that's, like, a big thing they hide behind it.
I'm absolved.
Exactly. Like, and sexism within the queer community, like, sometimes, like, with gay men, like, the sexism that I've experienced, where it's like, well, I'm gay, therefore, I cannot be sexist.
Oh, and I can say whatever.
Right.
It shouldn't be harmful.
Exactly. Or I'm queer, and therefore, I cannot be racist, and therefore, you know, it's like, you know, you don't get to hide behind your oppressed identity and then do oppressive things. That's not how it works.
I think the understanding that we are all oppressed in one form or another is then what should push us to support each other in getting ourselves out of these things.
Exactly.
And it's weird, but it's also, you know, I think it's interesting how the cycles kind of repeat themselves, right? You think about, like, Israel and what happened with Israel. And I saw this interview from this one woman. She's Jewish, and she said, what breaks my heart the most about what's happening in Palestine right now is that Hitler won because we have become like him. Like what he did to us, right? And that's what happens whenever there's a trauma that isn't dealt with, whenever something massive happens and we just move on. What usually happens is the people who are at the receiving end of that trauma will somehow, in some way, then perpetuate the very same thing in a different form to another group that is weaker than them. You think about, like, boys who were raised in homes where their mom was being beaten up by their dad, and they, kind of are always saying, "Oh, I'll never become like my dad. I'll never become," and then they become like their dad, right? It's because there's this thing that wasn't worked on after there's something happened to you, and there's an anger inside you
that you did not
work on, that you did not work through. And I think there's a lot of anger inside Black men. There's so much anger.
And I think it speaks to like the infantilization within the apartheid system, because I think like you can never erase history.
Yeah.
And when you are the group that is being treated, like humiliated, you're viewed like a little boy, you're worthless, like that is such degradation, humiliation. And the only time you see masculinity and strength being portrayed is violence. Then when it comes to the time that you are now in power, you have not dealt with that. Your father did not deal with it. Your grandpa didn't. None of them dealt with it. And so now here you are, this little violent, angry person, because it's what's been ingrained. And, sometimes I almost want to say it's genetic, because sometimes the depth of it within the psyche is terrifying. But it's, and maybe that's why we have to look at when we talk these conversations. And that's why I said you don't exclude anyone from these conversations. So we're not excluding men from these conversations, but we're acknowledging that there's different purposes and roles in these conversations for men. In this moment, like with our shutdown, we want allyship. We want support. We want to be uplifted. We want to be amplified. We don't need them to take the stands and speak on behalf of us. We want them to hold space and speak with us and support us. And it's just human rights spaces is depressing. And I will say, though, with being on the continent in Africa, and one of the reasons this G20 was so important was because people don't look to Africa when things are happening. People don't care what happens on this continent. I mean, if we look at...
Unless they're just exploiting.
Like, if we look at Sudan, the Congo, right now there's a genocide happening in Nigeria. We look at, like, Somalia. We look at, like... do you know what I mean? Like, there's things happening here. We're looking at GBVF and Femicide in South Africa. It's happening, and people don't care. So there's no international pressure to fix it either. And that's, I think, the biggest thing we've been grappling with is it's the citizens versus the government. And unfortunately, citizens don't often win by themselves. With the apartheid system, there needed to be sanctions and exclusion. Then they were like, hold on, the whole world is not with us right now. We kind of need to change something.
We have to do something.
So it had to be coming from both ends. So similarly now with GBV, it's not coming from both ends. We're not getting the international pressure because people aren't looking on the continent and what's happening here. So we're having to push back. And that's why this G20 was such an important time for us. We're like, no, you're looking at us right now. While you're looking at us, hold on a second. We would like to get your attention. Exactly. Can we direct it to what's happening here? Now we're getting reaction. And it's like that kind of like, you got to come in from both sides, because if the people on the ground don't care, then no one's going to help push it here. But if no one is pushing from above the government, because you need something above them to also push, nothing's going to happen. It's such a...
You almost have to go to the very, very extreme to be able to get a reaction, which is why I guess even, to some degree, even the backlash, it's actually fine as long as we're having the conversation, right?
Exactly.
And people are seeing this. But I think what it calls to is we have to become louder, right? We have to become louder than the naysayers, and we have to become louder than. I think it's also not a time to kind of be.
Complacent.
Complacent and be in the background, because these conversations are happening in the spaces. So you made this very insane example of these grade 1 kids, right? That is to say that conversations around GBV are happening everywhere around our country. But it is the how and what is being said that I think we're not actually getting into. So clearly, boys are speaking amongst themselves around like, what does it mean to take? What does it mean? And men are having conversations amongst themselves about what power is and what respect is and what you do when you feel disrespected, etc., etc., etc. So the conversations are happening regardless. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having a child that's 7 years old saying things like that, telling another child that I'll rape you. So they're hearing it from somewhere, and which is why the people who are allies, particularly the men, you need to be louder. You need to be louder in your circles. You need to be louder wherever you are.
Families, work, friends. It doesn't stop in one particular location. Because it happens everywhere.
Because it's happening
it's not just happening like in the streets by a random person. It's happening within a family. It's happening at the workplaces. It's happening in data. Like it's not just here, one and done.
I think a couple of months ago, my mom, the church that she goes to, she was here for church, and my husband and I went to fetch her. And then when we got there, everyone was kind of in a frenzy. And the women were crying, and we didn't understand what was happening. Then eventually they said what had happened was the husband had locked all his kids up in the house. I think it was 4 girls, and burnt all of them alive. And he had warned his wife, so he told her that I'm going to burn all of you. She told the kids. For whatever reason, they didn't really believe her. So she managed to escape, but they all passed away. And
oh my gosh.
And when I was in high school, actually, one of our classmates, the same thing happened to her. Her dad was a policeman. We were in boarding school. He asked him to come back from home, which was strange because usually he'd just fetch them at the end of the term. But he asked them to come back. Anyway, they went, and burnt all of them, her 3 sisters and her mom. And what was happening with all of those conversations is then people would say, it's so unlike him.
Oh,
you know, because these people, they went to church together. They went to, she did say that there were marital issues, but it wasn't, everybody has, and so I'm saying you can't be quiet about, it's almost like you have to raise awareness around these things everywhere, because you don't know the men that you're sitting next to in the office or wherever. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they believe about abuse. You don't know what they believe about other women. You don't know what they believe.
That's why that National Sexual Risk Offenders is such a big deal, because when you're hiring people, I want to know when you're hiring someone that this is the person that's sitting next to me and across me.
Why do they not want to release that?
Apparently privacy issues. That's been like the biggest thing that they said is privacy issues. And I think
privacy for traitors.
Yeah. And like, so something you said that like I think is important is being loud. Yeah. And ironically, our shutdown is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
We're trying to silence the patient. And it almost can be envisioned as a funeral.
Yeah.
There is no presence.
Yeah.
Because we're dead. As far as they're concerned, we are dead. So why would we have a social presence, an economic presence? Why would we be even in the streets? You're letting us die, so we're dead. And that's what we're trying to depict, is when you allow these kind of things to keep happening, we will die. And dead people don't work. Dead people don't take to the streets. Dead people don't engage with you. Dead people are dead. Like that, and that's what they're letting happen. And so our shutdown is so intentional because of that. We're not taking to the streets. We're not doing any of that. Because that's not what happens when you're dead. And I almost want to say it's like a funeral. Like that's why we're wearing all black. That's why there's those 15 minutes of silence. It is a funeral of grief, of pain, of absence and emptiness. That is what we want to get across. That is the image that is supposed to be landing, is that this is what happens. And you will feel the consequences of our absence. And that's why when people are saying, why aren't we marching, taking to the streets? That's why. It's not a march. It's not about that. There's a reason we're doing it the way we're doing. And silence is loud. I don't think people realize how loud silence can be.
I think what feels so scary in my body right now, even as you say that, is I'm so glad that there is a financial aspect to this, and it's making me realize why it's so important, because I wonder if it would matter otherwise. I wonder if our country actually cares that we are dying. I wonder if, because the fact that we've gotten to this point, and you hear what's being said by government officials, and it's just very blasé, very, we understand, and we need to, no action being made. And every single year, there are just horrifying cases like case after case. Like I remember this one girl who her boyfriend cut her up into pieces and put her in a bag into pieces in university at the University of Fort Hare because he was upset with her and thought that she was cheating. And there was a march for that, right? And there was a march for Karab, and there was a march for Uyinene, and we've been marching. And I think if you're kind of sitting at home and you're thinking about the aspect of like not spending money, right? Like why it is that you should have no sort of interaction with anything that is assisting this economy, is because that might actually be the only thing that they care about.
You get it. Like
that might be the only thing that they care about.
What hurts the government? Money. Their economy.
Say that we're dead might not actually even be enough for them. That's the scary thing.
And I mean, I think as an organization, we don't want it to reach the point where we're burning buildings down and setting things on fire.
Yeah.
Like that is not the goal. And that's the thing that happens when you are at the point where you have taken to the streets.
Yeah.
You've had these protests. You're having these shutdowns. When it reaches the point of none of that is working, that's when the mob justice kicks in.
Yeah.
And that's when things start to get ugly. And that's why we're seeing a lot of people taking justice into their own hands.
Yeah.
That's why perpetrators are being outed on social media, why they're being killed in the street.
Yeah.
Why? Because no one's doing anything.
And
we could stop that if people did something.
Yeah. Look, I think we've spoken about so much. And and it's so important, but I just want to kind of bring it back to one, for people who are sitting at home who are thinking about speaking out, right? Thinking about who have been abused, but obviously there's so much, the cases don't go anywhere. I think I read a stat that said 95% of our cases go unreported.
Yeah, the rape cases.
Of rape cases. Who's kind of going, what is the point? What is even the point of outing my abuser? What is the point of sending a message to Women for Change or being involved in anything? One, I'd want to go to you to say, like, having worked with abusers and being so close to this, what would you say to them? And then what are the action points moving forward for everybody, for men, for women, for every single person that's watching? I think we have really probably laid it down. I don't think that there is anything more that we can say about why this is important. I think it's very clear. What is it that we do even beyond the 21st? How do we continuously engage with this to a point where we actually get to see a change, even if it's not in our lifetime? Because that's also...
I'll start with the one about speaking up.
Yeah.
I did a workshop on the power of speaking up. And something I wanted to emphasize them was there's different levels to speaking up. Speaking up can be as simple as admitting to yourself that something happened and that it was real. Because that's the first thing that we often deal with. It wasn't as bad, or maybe I was the problem. Like the first step,
I made it up.
Exactly. Is admitting to yourself that it was real and it happened. Then admitting to a safe person. That's another form of speaking up. Having safety, security, not being as alone in this conversation as you might have been. Then, and this is something that people need to lay off of people if they don't do this, because it's not fair, is to then do a formal report. One of the reasons that formal reports are powerful is, one, it does get the process going for you, but something that I think is big is that there's a ripple effect with speaking up. Reporting your case gives a number, because now there's another case that has been reported. And it might not go to court or anything, but you've just added to the database to show how many people are getting raped. And that helps with movements like this. The reason we can say 117 rape cases are reported is because someone had to report them.
Somebody had to report them.
And if they didn't report it, we wouldn't have those statistics, we wouldn't have those numbers. So in many ways, that is helping in these movements, because we're giving ammunition to our weapon. We're showing you that there are numbers behind this. So you're not only helping, in that sense, you're helping the movements right now to justify why we're doing that.
And other women who could then also be abused by the same person. Then if you have put your case forward, even if it went, even if it didn't go anywhere,
but it's there.
If another woman does it and it's for the same person,
now we have that.
Now we've got that, and you could eventually see. That's such a good point. Yeah.
So it doesn't just stop, and I think that's why it's a twofold.
Yeah.
You're helping yourself, but people don't realize how much they're helping each other.
Yeah.
Then we speak more about your artistry, your public kind of facing things, and this is when people get creative. We do podcasts, we do performances, we do things like that where we're getting out there and we're getting our stories to be visible, and that's what makes people feel not alone, because they feel validated. They feel like someone else understands their experience. Like, this is what gets it going. And then you have these big movements, which is what we're doing with the shutdown. And that's the last one. That's the final, that's the big boss. That's the end of all of this. That's what we're doing. Those are the moments now where we're calling for people to really unify, come together, show solidarity for these big moments. And so it's also kind of the action points of this big moment and how everyone plays a part. Like I mentioned earlier, for the 21st specifically, women and members of the queer community, we don't want them to go to work. We're encouraging them to stay away from work, whether it's paid or unpaid labor. We're inviting everyone to actually not engage with the economy, whether it's withdrawing money, making payments, or anything like that, because that also is something that speaks to, we're not supporting what's happening, so we're not even going to invest in your economy. And that applies to everyone. And the reason that it's distinctly the queer community and women for the work is because we're the ones who won't be attending work when we're dead. And I'm saying it so bluntly because that's what it is. We'll not be there because we are not alive to be there. So that's why they're doing that. And it's also why women in the queer community are the ones lying their bodies down at 12 o'clock for those 50 minutes of silence. Because again, it's us who are being killed. But everyone can wear black, and everyone can change their profile picture to purple. And the purple, people were like, why purple? I mentioned it's coming from our unburied casket, but online movements bring visibility. That's why we're at over 1 million signatures now on our petition, because that purple is now a purple movement. It's bringing eyes and visibility to this movement. So social media is having power. So changing profile pictures to purple, great. Wearing all black, also important, because we're in mourning. And that makes it so that anyone everywhere has a role to play in this movement. Past the 21st, you said this, that it hurts to say it, but might not be in our lifetime. That is the unfortunate reality of movements. In the 1920s, people who were pushing to end apartheid, they probably were not there to see it when we got democracy. Does that stop the need to happen? No. This is a baton that we're passing in a race. This isn't a sprint. We're not just going to run to the end and it's a finish. This is a marathon, and we are going to keep passing the baton to the next person until we reach the finish line. So might it be that, yes, we might not see the full effect? Sure. But if we think of the movements that have happened to this point, in 2018, there was the protest, I think it was the Am I Next, and it happened. And then the NSP was developed. Now, the NSP is developed, and our movement is saying, no, you guys have these policies, but you're not doing anything. We wanted it to become a national disaster. Right, cool. So now we've done that. Now, the next baton might be, okay, now that they've done that, we are seeing social and cultural challenges still, though, on the ground. We're not seeing within the community change happening. We need to do something there. And it keeps getting passed on until it's sorted, until it's done. And even movements now we're still dealing with the aftermath of these oppressive systems. And it's not completely over. But it's a baton that keeps getting passed. And the thing is, don't let the momentum die because it's now midnight the 22nd. Those movements have to keep going. We have to keep the momentum going. And we see it, unfortunately, with a lot of these social media movements, like with Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is still at war. It's still happening. But we've still talking about
down and we've moved on.
Right. But for us who continue to live it, we cannot move on. We have to keep pushing. So I think not losing that drive to keep pushing for that change is so important. We need to keep the pressure on our government's neck. We need to keep it going.
Thank you so much. Thank you for making the time. I can't imagine what it's like to be just going everywhere and having to speak about this on a daily basis, and how heavy it must feel, and angering it must be. But I think it is just it should be a motivator for all of us to figure out what it is that we can do in our own small corners. And there's nothing too small. Even if it's a conversation, even if it's asking your friends, hey, what do you think of this whole movement? Because then that's where you can start hearing the red flags, right? That's when you can start hearing, hi man, bye palaba, or whatever. And then you can start seeing, oh, I might actually be sitting next to a very dangerous person, somebody who could hurt someone. And what does it look like to hold each other accountable? Then what does it look like for us to hold space for one another? Because too many people understand so intimately what it is that we're talking about, and we have to get to a point where it's not so common. So please continue to follow Women for Change wherever you are in the world. There can never be enough supporters of movements like these. Let's keep telling our stories, and let's keep showing up. And remember, on the 21st, that's when we really, really need to show up in our numbers. And hopefully that silence speaks volumes. Thank you so much for joining me. Please take care of yourself, and remember to breathe, and we will make it through. We will make it through. We will figure it out, one day at a time. Thank you so much. Have a good one.